Hello and welcome back to the Department of Reinvention. In today's video I will be upcycling a McIntosh sideboard. Now McIntosh was a Scottish furniture designer, funnily enough, and you'll see later on there's a little metal panel on the inside with the Thistle logo of McIntosh. Now I believe this sideboard has a walnut veneer on the drawers and the cupboards. I'm not 100% sure what veneer is on top. It may also be walnut, just cut differently. I took this project as an opportunity to compare and contrast two paint strippers that I use fairly regularly. I used the Wick's own brand paint stripper, which is the big patch here, and then I also used some Nitromores on the smaller patch. And I left them for about the same sort of time. The Nitromores ended up being a little bit quicker to strip off the paint, but surprisingly, the cheaper option, the own brand Wick's paint stripper, ended up stripping much more than the Nitromores paint and is also obviously much cheaper. So that's the one I ended up using for this project. After stripping the varnish, I went in with the rotary sander with 120 grit sandpaper as a first pass, and then I went over with some 240 grit sandpaper just to smooth out the surface. And then it was my favourite thing on earth, stripping furniture legs. Whilst the sideboard is mostly in pretty good condition, there was some damage to the edges of the drawers and the cupboards. So that's why I decided to create a gold border around all of the drawers and all of the cupboards. So that covers that up really nicely, but still allows you to see most of the really beautiful wood grain. So you're about to see I use a heck of a lot of masking tape for this project to create a sunburst design. And I used a combination of just regular masking tape as well as Frog Tape's delicate surface tape, which is the yellow one, and ended up much preferring the Frog Tape. Regular masking tape can sort of leave a bit of a residue on wood if you're not careful, whereas the Frog Tape is much better on fine surfaces. To create this sunburst design involved sort of creating, almost covering most of the cupboard with wide masking tape, and then going over it with a very narrow masking tape to actually create the design, as you can see in the top cupboard, and then cutting out the masking tape, going over it with a craft knife either side of the really narrow masking tape, and peeling off what was underneath, creating this sunburst design. How many times can I say masking tape in one video? With everything now masking taped and ready to go, I went in with a spray gold paint. As ever, all the products I used on this project will be linked in the description below. Please enjoy this very satisfying masking tape peel. I also decided to spray the dovetail joins on the drawers because I thought it was just a nice little touch. I painted the edges of the sideboard with a charcoal furniture paint. I went over a couple of coats with that one and then finished it off with a couple of coats of matte clear varnish, which is what I finished the whole sideboard with. And here I go in with 2 coats of that matte clear varnish. The brass hardware was quite tarnished, so first of all it had a little white vinegar and water bath, and that loosened up a lot of the varnish that was on the hardware, and also helped to start loosen off some of the tarnishing. When they had dried, they then went into a bath of Brasso, and that was going to remove the last little bits of tarnish from all the hardware. I then went in with a wire brush to really get in all those tiny little intricate little pieces on the hardware and really get that Brasso in and get rid of that last little bit of tarnishing. I then lightly buffed them with a cloth. They then had another bath of dish soap with water just to loosen up any bits of Brasso left over on the hardware. I then went in with a nylon brush to get rid of any remaining bits of Brasso in the little detail of the hardware. This also helped to buff the pieces before they're ready to go back on the sideboard. To attach the brass backing plates onto the sideboard, I used some small brass pins and hammered them in. You'd think I'd move the camera before using a hammer right next to it, but you would be wrong. To clean up the green felt insert drawer that goes in the top drawer, I gave it a really good vacuum And I then went over it with a nylon brush, and that brings out all the dust and any trapped little bits of debris. And there we have it, one finished sideboard. I'm really happy with how this came out. Because there's so much lovely wood grain on this piece, I really wanted to use a design that didn't cover up too much of it, but created some extra flourishes for the piece. As always, throw me a like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated.